Happy Sabbath, friends. I hope that you are well. I hope that you are taking advantage to lock your phone today in this wonderful Sabbath. And with your phone, lock all your worries, all your stress, um, all your concerns, work, whatever it is. But if you're not able to, you're welcome to be here as well. And I'm happy to be able to connect with you. And I'm happy to tell you that phone or no phone, Jesus says today, come to me, all who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. So may we be able to all go to Jesus today, just right as we are. Today, I want us to journey with Jesus right away, to keep going through the Gospel of Matthew as we have. And we're going to read Matthew 4, verses 18 to 22. And it says the following. And Jesus, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw two brothers, Simon, called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. Then he said to them, Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. They immediately left their nets and followed him. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, in the boat with Zebedee their father, mending their nets. He called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father, and they followed him. So today I want us to spend a few minutes together talking about discipleship and what it looks like to be a disciple. Now, some of you may wonder why. Some of you may tell me that after all, we see each other in church every Sabbath. Let me read to you a quote from Scott McKnight's book, King Jesus Gospel. It says the following. What I heard was that you can have the one without the other. That you can be saved and not be a disciple. I smell the theological rat in that claim. I'm going to read it again. I heard that you can have the one without the other, that you can be saved and not be a disciple. Is that true? Do a lot of us, do I, go to church and sing hymns of praise and read and learn about eternal life-giving truths, but walk away and not live a disciple life Monday to Friday, or Sunday to Friday? Would it be possible that we have gotten so accustomed to living this way that we don't even know anymore what it is to be a disciple of Jesus? I smell a theological rat in it, and I want us to spend a few minutes together trying to revisit our concept and our understanding of discipleship. All right? We're just going to scratch the surface, but hopefully it'll be thought-provoking enough for you and me. So, let's get into this. So we have four disciples here in this story: Simon, Andrew, John, and James. All right? Two sets of brothers. Simon and Andrew, John and James. Now, what does the text tell us about them? Well, it tells us that they are disciples. Of course, they're disciples. They're fishermen. Pardon my brain. So, by fishermen, we get very quickly the picture that these are hard-working young men that are humble people. They probably don't have tons of education. And that is interesting because it tells me that they clearly don't have a lot of seminary experience, seminary life. They don't have a lifelong career of church leadership. So what makes them disciples, or what leads them into the path of discipleship, is their availability, their willingness. They are willing, they are available to Jesus. And so they become disciples. Now, if we use a little bit of holy imagination, we can find two fundamental reasons why they would be willing and available to follow Jesus. Okay, the first one is longing. We're living in the Roman Empire, being right in the midst of a boiling political tension between Romans and Jewish leaders and different revolutionary group like the Zealots. Would it be hard for young, hardworking men with families or dreaming of having families to long for a kingdom ruled by a good king, a kingdom of peace, a kingdom of justice and equity? So while, for those of you who know the Gospels a little bit better, we realize very quickly that what these disciples are thinking about and longing for needs to have a lot of reshaping. Seems very clear and fair to imagine that these disciples definitely longed for something better, for a better reality than what they lived. The second element that makes them so willing and available is their trust. Now this is interesting because they really didn't seem to have any kind of relationship with Jesus at that point. But when Jesus calls them, they follow. They drop everything. And Matthew makes a point to say that they don't think about it, but they drop everything and they follow him. Why? Well, I believe that their longing was married with a trust, with a faith informed by a knowledge of a good God. A knowledge of a God that again, in spite of the cultural understanding of God that surrounded them, their trust and their desire to trust was strong enough, paired with their longing, to help them just ditch everything and go. So what we see so far about these disciples is that they were willing and available, no matter how uneducated or how unprepared human eyes and minds may see them to be. They were there. Jesus called them, they were there. They longed, their hearts were full of longing for a better world, a better kingdom, a better reality. And thus they trusted and they took a huge leap of faith, informed by their faith in God, to ditch temporary gains and temporary well-being and seek an eternal gain, an eternal well-being. Now, why have we potentially walked away from this kind of discipleship? Well, let me suggest that some big reasons why is because we have grown to only long for Netflix accounts or Disney Plus or the latest vacation pack or whatever it is. And we have been told that all that we need to trust is some loud political voice, and that our involvement or our willingness to follow and to change the world is limited to putting our name on a ballot. And maybe we have grown to forget that this world, the world we live in right now, is a world that is violently opposed to God and to His creation and to His dreams and hopes and plans for the world that He created for you and me. But the call to discipleship is a call to partner with God into giving people a foretaste of a kingdom that is very subversive right now. It's very hidden. It is like a grain of mustard, but that one day will grow, as we see in the prophecy of Daniel about the statue and the kingdoms and the rock that come and smashes it all, and then the rock grows to be filling the whole earth. That is the kingdom that we come to present. That is a kingdom that we come to announce and that we come to partner with Jesus into sharing all around us. So, how did the disciples share this? I want to read to you a quote from Ellen White's book, The Gospel Worker. It says the following: "On his journeys through country and cities, he, Jesus, took them, disciples, with him, that they may see how he taught the people. They traveled with him from place to place. They shared his frugal fare, and like him were sometimes hungry and often weary. On the crowded streets, by the lakeside, in the lonely deserts, they were with him. They saw him in every phase of life. They bound themselves up with the mightiest of all powers, and were ever longing for a deeper, higher, broader comprehension of eternal realities, that they might successfully present the treasures of truth to a needy world." I love how Ellen White describes the disciples as bounding themselves up with Jesus, sharing everything with him, so that by sharing everything with him, he would fill everything with the knowledge of a beautiful, loving God that was so powerful and so strong that no Roman Empire, no political force, no Republican, no Democrat, no Pharisee, no Sadducee, nor anything will stand in the way. And because of their willingness, they lived this intimate life with Jesus, where He became primary, and His kingdom and the beauty and power and eternity of His kingdom became so important and so powerful that if tradition is right, we see that Peter and Andrew were crucified, John died in exile, as the Bible seems to show, and James was beheaded. Their lives were secondary. Their temporary gains, their temporary well-beings were secondary to foretasting and announcing and spreading the good news of an eternal kingdom ruled by a good God, by a loving God. The question for you and me is what are we bound up to? What are we disciples of? Anything or anyone that we may be bounding ourselves up to that may not be God. Anything and anyone that we may follow as disciples that may not be Jesus is going to leave us empty-handed. And it's going to disappoint sooner or later. You may say, well, discipleship is all fine and good, and this ability to be willing and to trust and to find the answer to one's longing in Jesus Christ and in His beautiful call to discipleship is all good and well, but does it have to be for everyone? Well, in what we call the Great Commission, which are Jesus' last words before ascending to heaven after the cross and the resurrection, it seems to be that discipleship is for more than just some people. Matthew 28:19 and 20. It says, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of age." Therefore go and make what? Disciples. So it would seem that Jesus equates being a Christian, a follower of Christ, to being a disciple. And that the life of trusting and willingness, availability and longing and binding oneself up to, that the disciples lived, is to be the experience of every single Christian until He returns. And for the sake of clarity, I want to read Eugene Peterson's beautiful definition of what it means to be a disciple. It says the following: Christian discipleship is a decision to walk in His ways, steadily and firmly, and then finding that the way integrates all our interests, passions, and gifts, our human needs, and eternal aspirations. It is the way of life that we were created for. Oh, friends, what this is saying is that you and I are not called to stop doing what we're doing and to be disciples. That you and I are meant to be disciples, and that Jesus' call is not a call to interrupt what we're doing as human beings and do something else, but rather to go back to what we are created to be and do. And I cannot imagine, I don't know about you, but I cannot imagine longing for and being available to and trusting someone better than Jesus. I cannot imagine anyone and anything better to follow and to live for than Jesus Christ. A Christ that, as we have celebrated recently in Easter, was born, lived, and died and resurrected for you and for me, announcing the good news of a world that is fair, that is just, that is run by the economy of love, and that has no end. Can you imagine Jesus calling you today? I hope that you are. I hope that you're hearing that call, and I hope that you will answer. Have a very happy Sabbath. Love you guys.